Brilliance Audio presents Dark Mother Earth by Kristian Novak, translated by Ellen Elias Borsach, performed by Will Dameron.
Come on, cut the crap. You're so full of shit lately. Why would the mall drive you crazy all of a sudden?
Matija looked away and rolled his eyes.
A year ago you were ranting about how social media distances people from each other. And anyway, dressed up like that, you look just like an eager consumer.
Gita knew she was being harsh, so after a pause, she reminded him how great the book he'd already written was. As far as he was concerned, she may as well have unscrewed his head and spat down his gullet. He didn't listen, pretending to study each window display they passed. Arrogantly, as if he could afford everything. The mall didn't put him off as much as he liked to pretend, as it ought to do to someone who was almost 30 and a writer. The big city malls looked as if someone had designed them to be exactly like a major European airport, like Frankfurt or Charles de Gaulle. They were a cocktail of perfume, disinfectant, feces, sweat-soaked fabric, fresh newspapers, fast food, uncomfortable chairs that made spending money more appealing, identical spaces with tropical ferns and glass surfaces, corporate art, designer ideals of happiness, and a foreign life. Matija liked malls more than airports because there was no removing of shoes, no padding of his jacket pocket to make sure his passport and boarding pass were still there, and no flight waiting for him, while he pretended the whole time he wasn't scared of turbulence. On the other hand, only important-looking people walked around airports. Running into someone at a major European airport, sharing a latte macchiato, and chatting about the project he was working on supercharged Matija ego, while meeting someone at the new mall in Savica was merely awkward. It was late afternoon on one of the first days of January 2011. The media was reporting on what people were eating and the slippers worn by the former prime minister while he was in an Austrian jail, and there were frantic attempts to persuade the nation that a skiing competition in the Zagreb Hills was a fabulous notion, not an overblown project to bring a flood of tourists to the metropolis, capitalizing on the idea that Croats are admired everywhere for their famously superior sports gene. There were 8 girls pregnant at the Bjelovar Commerce High School, and a grandmother in Gorski Kotar had been reimbursed by a bankrupt funeral parlor after they'd forced her to take possession of her pre-purchased coffin, which she put in the only place she had room, the middle of her bedroom. She covered it with a tablecloth, a vase with flowers, and a plate of cookies, hoping she'd stop thinking of how she'd have to lie in it someday. Matija could barely mask his alarm at the dread of losing himself in life's bottomless pits. He'd agreed to take Gita shopping as a gesture of gratitude for her willingness to read something he was hoping would become his 3rd book. She was the last of 3 readers of his newest work before he decided whether to send it to an editor. His first 2 books, a collection of short stories, The Discovery of Remarkable Organisms in 2006, and a novel, Good Morning Phantom, in 2008, were fairly well received by critics and the reading public, meaning that the number of copies sold was just south of 4 digits. With this 3rd book, things had gone differently. He'd worked on it for over a year, and throughout the process, he was dogged by the smell of trash and rot. He knew the story wasn't working. At times, he was seized by paranoia that he too smelled bad. Out of the corner of his eye, he'd see colleagues and total strangers in line at the grocery store whispering awkwardly. That whole year, the story never once pulled him in. He massaged the plot in hopes that he might build a more or less coherent collage of banter and feigned pent-up emotional turmoil. The scent of garbage emanated straight from the icon for Novel 2011.doc on his desktop. The story was about the tragic love between a young Roma man and a Croatian woman, and about a young policeman of mixed Serbian and Croatian parentage who was investigating the man's brutal murder. Matija imagined it to be the kind of book to inspire comments like, "Holy shit! This is the hottest stuff I've read in years. I wept and roared with laughter. What a scintillating imagination. I can't believe someone I know writes like this." Pardon me, you wouldn't happen to be Matija, would you? Did you write that book about the Roma man? Apologies for the intrusion, but it's brilliant. Exactly what our country needs. Give it to her straight. Spit in the eye of Croatia. Would you be a guest on my Sunday afternoon talk show? In his latest book, Dolenšec gives us the tragic potential of a character from the gallery of the Croatian public's Commedia dell'arte.